Hey viewers, this is Sci-Fi Audio from Glen Rock, New Jersey, showcasing a recent arrival at our shop, a full-blown Jadi tube system from the late 90s that came to us from a collector, someone that was putting together a pretty exotic system, complex, exotic, and about as high-end as it gets. We don't see stuff like this very often. We see one or two pieces in this sort of vein, but it's rare that we get an entire system. So I thought it'd be worth sharing with you guys what it looks like and what $500,000 of today's dollar buys you in tube equipment. There are plenty of videos out there of $1 million, $2 million systems, but this one's pretty neat in terms of its exclusivity and its limited production run. So it's worth a deeper look. So let me dive right in. What I'm going to do is break this into two parts. First, I will give you an overview of what components we've got here, and then take a little bit of a deeper look at how each one works. So starting from the front row, believe it or not, these 6 boxes right here are a single amplifier. That's a left channel right here, these 3 chassis, and that is a right channel. It's a handmade Jadi J800 amplifier constituting 6 channels at 400 watts. Actually, I'm sorry, six chassis at a total of 400 watts. And each of the chassis has a very specific function. The one on the outside, which are a bit larger, are the power supplies, and then followed by the output stages. So there are umbilicals that connect the output stages directly to the power supplies in the left channel, and it's a mirror image with the right channel. At 400 watts, at 8 ohms, it's quite an amplifier. It's a lot of tubes. It takes a total of 24 tubes per side just for the output stages to get 400 watts. And in terms of construction, it's really neat. Jadi makes all the chassis out of stainless steel. They use a lot of brass and incredibly oversized transformers, and it's all handmade, point-to-point wiring using the highest level components that you can find. So just imagine it took 3 of us a few hours to unbox the J800, each module weighing several hundred pounds. It comes with these neat straps that helps you kind of position them to place. And it was quite the feat, but we got it done. Interestingly enough, we're actually not running these speakers with that amplifier. Those amplifiers are brand new. We haven't put the tubes on them yet. And we may not even do so until we find their next home. If the new buyer wants us to put the tubes in and power it up, we will. Otherwise, we'll ship it along as a new old stock amplifier. So this retailed for about $90,000 in the late 90s. It's quite a bit more today. I don't think they make the J800 anymore. At least I didn't see it on the Jadi website. They do make smaller versions of it, but this was so far out there that I imagine it was made in pretty small quantities. So what we're running the speakers with are these 845s. These are really neat single-ended 845 monoblocks, running about 20 watts. We're a big fan of these. We've got a few pairs of these, and we have them around the shop, and we use them with any sort of vintage high-efficiency speaker. Here you can see the single 845 tube, which glows brighter than most tubes do, and the same sort of build construction as everything you'll see. The stainless steel chassis, oversized input, output transformers, capacitors, just beautiful construction from Jadi. So, all right, so that's the overview for the amplification side. Now moving on to what's on the rack. Again, a custom-made rack just for these components. We're not sure of the exact configuration of how they were supposed to be laid out because we never did get to speak to the owner that was assembling the system. He passed away, and we bought the equipment subsequent to that. So we've kind of pieced it together based on some notes and equipment count and some imagination as what the long-term vision was for this. But this is only about half of the equipment. You can kind of get a sense of how big the system would have been if we'd taken and actually pulled out all the amplifiers. There was at least another, 6 channels of amplification slated for the system. And so we're running these speakers, the Eurythmies, with their internal crossovers, and that's how we are able to just run them with a single left and right channel. But the intent was because we did find these left and right crossovers, these four-way crossovers, which are in fact active, I think the intent was to use the JA800s, these large amps, to drive the bass cabinets, and then use a single 845, one of these guys, to drive the mid-range, another one to drive the lower mid-range, and then for the tweeter. So I think the ultimate plan was to have 4 channels of amplification, 4 per side, or totaling 8 channels to drive the Eurythmies. And that's why we've got these active crossovers. The neat thing about the active crossovers is that they have their own separate tube power supply. So it's a 4 chassis crossover, if you may. The top being the controller and the bottom being the power supply for each left and right channels. Moving up at the middle of the rack, over here we've got a DAC. It's called the JS1. It's a tube DAC, also from the same period. So again, this would have been the power supply here for the DAC, which is sitting right above it. And then moving up the middle, that is a JP200 preamp in its balanced form. Another crazy piece from Jadi, top of the line as well. 4 chassis for a preamp, left and right channels. So here you see the power supply for the right channel, and here's the power supply for the left channel. So they're discrete left and rights. They're essentially mono preamps. So you actually have to adjust the volume on each of the two chassis for the left channel, right channel independently. And I'll show you how that's done in a bit. So it's not uncommon to see a preamp that has a separate power supply, but it's a lot less common to see a dual mono preamp that has separate power supplies totaling 4 chassis. I think the last one that we had with that was configuration would have been one of the early Krells. And then sitting on top of that is the JD1 CD drive. Beautiful piece, top loading with a sliding door, which is in fact then connected to the DAC, a couple shelves below. All right, let's talk a bit about the speakers. So the Eurythmies came out in late 90s. I believe that they were on the cover of Stereophile, where they received tons of praise. It was an interesting design for the time. Nowadays, it's common for someone to go to a hi-fi show and see some crazy horn-loaded speakers coming out of Japan or the US. But back in the 90s, this was pretty far out there. You know, they're very, very interesting looking, and they sound phenomenal. It's got a great, delicate, deep bass and mids, and wonderful imaging. So these are 4 ways, and there's nothing really exotic about them. The drivers are conventional drivers. I believe that the bass drivers are actually just JBLs, and the mid-ranges are Dynaudios. But obviously they've worked their magic in there, not just in the cabinet, but in the design and layout and making of all the enclosures. Give you a better look at the handcrafted mid horn. There's the tweeter, and there's the lower horn. And you can see it just uses a conventional driver with some beautiful cabinet work and machine work. I believe this horn here in particular is made out of fiberglass, while the rest are solid wood. All right, so that is the Eurythmie speaker. Excuse me a second while I fight with my camera. There we go. So at the base of these speakers, you will find the passive crossover, which is what we're utilizing right now. The passive crossovers do the job of dividing the frequencies to the appropriate drivers, and that's how we're able to power it with a single amplifier. All right, so let me give you a closer look at this. So here is the crossover, the JF2 crossover, the 4-piece unit, and there are 4 knobs. Essentially, these are the crossover points for the low drivers, the mid-lows, the mid-highs, and the highs. So you essentially would manually tune exactly how you'd want this speaker to sound by picking every one of your crossover points. So you do the same thing for the left channels and the right channel. All right, moving on to the closer look at the DAC. Pretty simple. Here's a power supply. Pardon me for all the fingerprints. This this brass faceplate is incredibly difficult to keep the fingerprints out of it. So we've got LEDs here for 44K and 48, and the selection for digital inputs. And then moving up to the preamp. Highly reflective surfaces, so really hard to photograph, but here's what I was talking about. In order to get the volume adjusted, you would essentially count the clicks. So you go maybe 5 clicks for the left channel, 5 clicks for the right channel, and that would set your volume. And it would also double as your balance control. So if you wanted a little bit more on the left channel versus the right channel, you would just do less clicks. So highly inconvenient, but as high-end as it gets. Having separate chassis for left and right channel, it gives you the best possible signals separation that you can get in a preamp. And moving up, here's the closer look at the CD drive. This is the J1 drive. It's only a drive. Plays Redbook CDs. You can see that it follows the same construction quality, stainless steel chassis. This has a sprung suspension, and it uses a conventional display and control system, probably borrowed from some other CD player like a Philips or Sony. But obviously, Jadi put their own magic into it. This thing weighs nearly 60 pounds. It's absolutely beautifully built and a pleasure to operate. It's not only super responsive, but it's a pleasure to load CDs. Check this machine work on the drawer. Little LED goes on. Solid aluminum drawer work. Here's the Jadi puck, and you pretty much just drop the CD into place, like many other top-loading CD players. So I'm muting the preamp. Can't play too much music because YouTube won't like it, but give you a sense of what we've got here. 5 clicks there, muting's off, CD's playing. All right. So, you know, I often sort of wonder and try to picture who would buy a system like this. Clearly, it's someone that wants to skip right to the top of the chain. You know, rather than play around with different audio systems over the years, if someone really wants to get the absolute best that money can buy at this point, this would certainly be under consideration. So about $500,000 by today's dollars. We will be listing this online little by little. It's quite a bit of work to test and catalog all this. So visit our website if you want to sort of see what all these components end up selling for. We'd love to sell it as a system. I suspect there's someone with deep pockets out there that's going to want the whole thing. But we'll probably offer certain pieces because we do have more than one system out of the entire lot. And that's it, the Jadi reference system. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to our channel. It'll keep us motivated to keep making these videos. And visit our website at hifiaudio.com. Thank you for watching.